I'm Angela-Renee, the host of I Love BK, and we are here with the illustrious singer, songwriter, and lyricist, Gordon Chambers, and I can't wait to talk to him. Growing up in Teaneck, New Jersey with the Isleys and I think Phoebe Snow and people like that, what inspired you to move to Brooklyn?
Teaneck was a great place to grow up for the inspiration because a lot of entertainers did live in Teaneck. Brooke Shields lived around the corner, and Diana Ross even had a condo in Teaneck. Muhammad Ali's daughter went to Teaneck High School. So
You know I went to Teaneck High, right?
Oh,
Sure did. Thomas
okay.
Jefferson.
So you know all about it.
I know all about it.
And then Inglewood being so close to Regina Bell and Bernard Bell, and today they were childhood friends of mine, the group that Big Bub was in. So it always made pursuing entertainment or being in the entertainment industry seem very tangible because these people were like neighbors. Even Kool and the Gang lived around the corner, Millie Jackson.
Oh yeah.
So it made the dream seem tangible, and and there were entertainers who lived in Teaneck who actually would give like jazz musicians, Rufus Reed,
Dick Griffin too, right?
Dick Griffin, who I spoke to the other day for the first time in a long time, who would come and give like master classes to me as a kid, to the magnet school as kids. It made the dream seem tangible, but like Teaneck being so close to the city, my allure was always in the city. I always wanted to as soon as I would, even before I had a driver's license, I would get on the bus and go to like Jazzmobile or go to like any little free thing. Sometimes I remember like when I was a teenager, Diane Reeves was speaking at Tower Records. Back then there was free things, and there was Central Park concerts. I would always be in the city, and my love of Brooklyn specifically came one summer when I was, while I was in college. I went to Brown University, also a very artistic college, which also had a little celebrity. John F. Kennedy Jr. and Rhonda Ross and Tracy Ellis Ross were students during my era. But I got a job at the Village Voice for the summer.
Okay.
And that particular summer, that was the summer of '88. A lot of the people I worked for and worked with were living in Brooklyn. Lisa Jones, Miri's Baraka's daughter. She became like an early mentor, and she would always have me come by the weekends to her house and just introduce me to people. And I remember going to, they were all in the Spike Lee crowd.
Yeah. Okay, so you're here, you're in Brooklyn. Now, Brooklyn of the 90s was different than Brooklyn now. How do you feel about the current climate of gentrification in Brooklyn now after COVID-19, everything? How do you feel about being a Brooklyn resident now?
That's like several questions. Let's take them one by one. The gentrification has been an experience. I remember coming here when it was my allure to the neighborhood was that it was this very Black artistic mecca of a neighborhood. It's less of that than it used to be, but I still do bump into Spike sometimes riding his bike. His offices are around here, and he throws a lot of functions here. And Carl Hancock Rux, who's a writer who lives around the corner. A lot of visual artists live in here, like that. Some of whom I collect. Kara Walker is a neighbor. Micheline Thomas is a neighbor, and I'm an art collector, so I have pieces by some of these artists, so it still has a visual art, community, but not as much of the community that allured, not as much of the musician community that allured me to the neighborhood. But I love living in this neighborhood very much. It's a destination neighborhood. People love to, when I invite them, people love to come here. We have great restaurants, we have parks, we have, now over the years of gentrification brings some perks, like more grocery stores. So I do more cooking as I've gotten older. We drink more wine as I've gotten older. So we have wine stores, we have, good organic grocery stores. So we have a farmer's market around the corner. I work out in the park. So I've been here 20 years and I've gotten to really appreciate the amenities, but I've also seen the schools improve. I live on a block with 2 schools, and I've done some teaching in one of the schools, and I've seen the schools, I've seen more parental involvement in the schools. I've just seen a difference because the kids walk here to and from school. I've seen a different kind of swagger, a different kind of confidence, a different kind of comeuppance in the
Okay.
youth. And I don't know, I can't really put my finger on why that is, but I have seen that the neighborhood is definitely safer than it used to be, for sure. You know, when I first bought this house, you know, they used to call Myrtle Avenue Murder Avenue.
Murder Avenue. Yeah.
And to think about any being like on the other side of Myrtle, I was like,
Avenue,
oh my
yeah.
goodness, you're going to like literally,
Yeah.
you know, the devil's workshop. But now, you know, we have the Brooklyn Navy Yard. There's movies, you know, studios.
Signage
So,
studios, yeah.
I mean, the neighborhood has been quite exciting to see all the changes. But I do miss some of the community.
yeah.
I do. I
The
can't.
Brooklyn Renaissance, as they say.
Yes.
Speaking of which, though, now that there have been so many changes, what ways have you been able to pivot and sort of share your art now through, you know, now that we've had to deal with COVID and other things? How have you been able to transition?
Interesting question. In the last 6 months, I mean, one thing that I've done a lot of in the last 5-6 years is a lot of vocal coaching.
Yes.
And I love vocal coaching because, for one thing, it builds confidence in people and brings people peace. You know, when people can feel heard and they can stand up in a room and feel unique and feel like it's okay to be you and actually find your voice and sing your voice. It's very empowering, and I do it for all ages. But since the pandemic, I've done quite a bit more of it because people have been reaching out, wanting to express themselves. And I was featured on Brooklyn News, the News 12 channel.
Yeah.
They did like a feature on me doing vocal coaching during the pandemic as a way for people to express themselves. And I got a lot of new students out of it. So,
and you do it virtually?
I do it virtually, yeah. So yeah, I've been doing it virtually. And so, you know, I live in a big enough space where some students do come by, and we can sit 10 feet apart and still do a lesson as well. So
speaking of virtually, one of the things that has been really popular are the IG Lives and the Versus battles.
Absolutely.
Talk about the references that have been made recently to you and your success in these Versus battles between Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight and Monica and Brandy, etc. Talk about that. How does that feel?
Well, you know, even before the Versus battles, I mean, I did some IG Lives myself. And then I would just notice during the pandemic, in their IG stories, they'd be like listening to such and such a song written by my friend Gordon Chambers, or people would start sending me like little clips of them at home listening to a song, or them doing their own little rendition of it. Like, I'd noticed that during the pandemic, people listened to a lot of music.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of podcasts myself because I'm trying to understand what's going on in the world.
Yes.
And with these elections coming up, and we must vote, everyone.
Man.
So I listened to more podcasts this year than ever before. Plus, being in quarantine solo, it's kind of almost like it's like conversation kind of keeps you company. But I've noticed that so many people have been listening to so much music and so much of my music. And so all through the pandemic, people have been reaching out to me, sending me memes or sending me little videos of just saying how much they've been really listening to my lyrics and how impactful they have been, specifically at this time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been affirmation and confirmation of the kind of body of work that I think God summoned me to do. Because I knew at a young age I could write, you know, music, but you know, that was always sort of writing. But when Danielle Morton, who was a classmate of mine, passed away in 1985, I wrote this one particular song in commemoration of her. When I wrote that particular song in commemoration for Danielle, who was murdered in 1995, and shared it with her parents and friends and colleagues in the community, and saw her touch people, it shifted my life.
Is that Missing You?
No, that was a song called Always Be There that I wrote in high school. But it shifted my focus as a songwriter to really go deeper and to try to write songs that I could really pivot into my own personal emotions and not to be afraid of the depth of the pain or the healing, and to write that kind of catalog of body of work. So during the pandemic, I think that people have been listening to more and more music in general, and those who've been listening to my music have really been focusing on the lyrics. I mean, I've had my phone rings with, you know, people apologizing or trying to, you know, I hadn't heard from in years and years and years. And Missing You, when Brandy played Missing You, I mean, I was just listening to the verses just as a fan, you know, and I had no idea. I mean, I thought if at all she might have played One Voice, which I wrote for the Never Say Never, and but it wasn't a single, so I didn't know. But when she played Missing You, which I always didn't think of it as a Brandy song, it was a collaboration.
Yeah.
I cried, you know, when she started that poem.
So many people
I cried, you know, I started to cry when she started reading all the names that she was dedicating it to of Kobe and
Taylor.
Chadwick, because we've lost so many heroes, and Whitney Houston, because I knew that Whitney was a friend of all of ours, myself, Brandy, and Monica, colleague and friend. We all got to know her personally. And I knew that Whitney had gone to visit Brandy and Monica a couple of days before she passed. So when she said Whitney Houston, a tear came to my eye. And then when she played Though I'm Missing You, I mean, I was so shocked and moved.
It was awesome.
And I was just like, thank you, God, for just recognizing my work and letting me live long enough to know that these songs have really touched and healed people.
That was 96, right?
Yes, 1995.
95, right?
Yep.
It was the soundtrack to on the Set It Off soundtrack.
Yes, it was nominated for the Grammy in '96, but it was it's
somewhere like that.
In that
Just
era.
sort it out.
That good old R&B, 90s
Yeah, that
R&B.
good old R&B, and I think Gladys Knight, Shaka Khan,
And
who else?
Tamia.
Brandy and Tamia,
Yes.
right?
We did a
yeah.
beautiful interview about Missing You the other day on YouTube. Beautiful interview.
Oh wow, I have to take a look at that. But
Yeah.
so I thought it was amazing. I personally was in tears. So many people were like, okay, is anybody having problems with their allergies, or is it just me? Of
Yeah.
course they were really feeling it. But talk about maybe someone that you've written for that we would be surprised about, to know that you've written a song for them.
Hip hop, like my friend Steph Reed, who's also a friend of one of your camera.
Yeah, I know Steph.
You all know Steph.
He's
so
also a Virgo like me, yeah.
He's such a Virgo.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like we're hanging out tomorrow for his birthday, and it's just like the Libra in me and the Virgo in him. It's just sometimes can be too much. Pray for us.
Yes.
So anyway, but I mean, Steph always says like, you never talk about your hip hop credits. But I mean, I co-wrote with Latifah a song called Winky's Theme, which was rap and singing.
Right.
But I started out like with Diddy and the Hitmen, like doing a lot of, working. I was always working on R&B, but in those same studios where Biggie and Lil' Kim and all the, all Junior, in Puffy's Bad Boy Studios. So I knew all of them. I knew Nas. I hung out with Nas. I wrote a lot with the Trackmasters, and they also, produced Nas and had the same manager as Steve Styles. So my early days, I spent really with the hip hop community. KG, who was 1/3 of Naughty by Nature, but also obviously R&B producer. But I was in sessions. I was always the R&B guy.
Really?
But I was always very much in the 90s hip hop community, and knew a lot of rappers. I mean, Lil' Kim said, "Don't look into my eyes," singing "I Apologize." I remember that on one of her songs.
That's a tribute.
And that was kind of like, oh, Lil' Kim gave me a shout out. But I knew, Kim. I knew
That's
Biggie.
awesome.
I knew Faith. I knew Faith before she had her record deal. I knew, I remember doing sessions I called him Sean because I knew him so long, in his apartment, and Kirk Burroughs used to work for his company, the very early days of, and he's gone on to become a gazillionaire. But I was kind of like, that's kind of a part of my story too, because 90s was, the golden era of R&B and hip hop, so it was all kind of, and the communities were all, kind of like, we're all, just trying to get our dream on.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, you did mention about voting and, making sure that we vote, and talking about how Brandy attributed or dedicated the song to Breonna Taylor and others that have lost their life. How do you feel that as artists and creatives, singer-songwriters, whatever, how can we inspire and affect change at this point through our art? Do you have any idea, how that looks going forward?
Yeah, I do. I think we have to keep the hope alive. I think that artists are the healers. We're the hope, and we're the healing.
Yeah.
I have a lot of activist friends, many of who've come here to dinners, or who I've talked, on the phone with. Even Steph's son, was very much on the front lines, marching and, and I've hosted dinners and just been an emotional support to many of the people, the activists, or just people marching on the front line, and I've given money, of course, to different, organizations, and the Biden campaign, because we have to donate to the campaign. We have to put our money where our mouth is if we want Trump to get, we have to remember that who is in the administration now, and so that gives us arts organizations right now are really struggling. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Social justice organizations are doing well.
Yeah.
But the arts, during the pandemic are really struggling. I've talked to a lot of people in the art, arts spaces and the nonprofit spaces. Those worlds are based on people coming to see the art.
Absolutely.
So it's a whole big pivot, and as artists, we can use our platforms, to share about causes or that we believe in because we have audiences. That's one way. But we provide the hope. We provide the healing, whether through the music or as educators or just being, accessible to each other as we're doing right now, providing space for each other, holding space, being community with each other. Because, if you look back through the civil rights movements, I mean, they sang. Mahalia Jackson was the one who was literally on the pulpit with Martin Luther King and said, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." Mahalia was there, and that's the connection and the closeness and the inspiration. A lot of civil rights people talk about it. We sang, we drew on strength from the songs. So, we have to remember that the first civil rights movement, before there was a civil rights movement, was the songs. I mean, songs that were in the fields, in the cotton fields, "Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world." The songs, that we call gospel, you could call them gospel, but you could also call them protests. Because the songs were not about the condition. The songs were like, I transcend this position.
Yes.
I'm singing of freedom. I will get out. I will
Yes.
transcend and get out of here.
Change gonna come.
So, even though you couldn't always do it, you couldn't take the shackles off. You could take the shackles off your mind. I mean, one of the most powerful lyrics of Bob Marley ever said is, "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." So artists are the healers. We're the hope. We're the light.
Speaking of,
And we have to really make sure that we're very sensitive souls. So we have to
Yes.
make sure that we don't, get too in our feelings where we can't, be what God needs us to be at this time.
So speaking of Marleys, I believe your parents migrated from Jamaica
Yes.
here, right? I wasn't sure, but I thought I heard a little twang in there. You can
Yeah.
still do your patois?
My patois not so good, but but I understand it. I don't practice it enough, but I understand it.
Okay.
Right.
So to that end, though,
And I know where to get the good Jamaican for the real thing.
that's what I was getting ready to
I know
ask
that.
you. So since we're here, we're talking about, and some people call Brooklyn, it's been known to be Little Jamaica.
Yeah.
Where do you get your good Jamaican
Well, we
food?
have a restaurant right around the corner here from Buff Patty that I support, several times a week because they're there. They make great chicken soup, really good chicken soup. And Jamaicans like soup. Soup is a big thing. And all foods, all cultures like soup. There's a Jamaican place called The Islands. These two ladies that have had that restaurant for years and years that I love their cooking. Their jerk chicken is like amazing. Their shrimp, they make like jerk shrimp, calypso shrimp, garlic shrimp. They make beautiful salmon. They make jerk lamb. They make good food in the islands. So sometimes I will take a trip over to Crown Heights to go there. But there's a place deep in Brooklyn on Utica called the Boston Jerk Center, which probably has the most authentic jerk pork that I've had outside of Jamaica.
Okay.
Because jerk is actually made in the ground. And I think they actually may have I don't know. I feel
They
like
might have a pit in the
I feel like they got a pit in the back. Because it's very authentic there. But that's deep in Brooklyn on Utica. It's called the Boston Jerk Center because the town where jerk was actually created is a town near Port Antonio called Boston. So when I was writing, I'm like, Boston Jerk Center. I said, I know that's really
Gotta
the
be
real
the spot,
thing.
right?
And it's like in a piece of paper.
Oh,
Because that's how they usually get it.
Do it in
it's like
Jamaica.
they serve it to you in this piece of oily paper. And you can't eat it every day, but it's so good. It's so good. But just when you wanted the real thing, you got to travel. You got to go deeper into Flatbush and deeper in Crown Heights, but to get the real thing. But and there's places, I love a good roti too. I love a good roti from Ali's Roti Shop.
Oh, that's on Fulton, yeah.
Oh my God, I love a good roti.
Good food.
So sometimes I want that Trini,
yes.
that Trini flavor, not just Caribbean, not just Jamaican, but I want that good roti in my life sometimes too. And I'll make a trip for some food now.
You can make a trip for some
Shit,
food.
y'all should have brought me some. Anyway.
So two last things. You spoke about your favorite restaurant haunts. I won't bug you with that. But anybody in particular that you would like to collaborate with that you haven't yet?
I would love to work with Rihanna.
Oh.
I would love to write a ballad for Rihanna.
Oh.
Because she's
that
just
sounds
dope.
sexy.
Like her sound, that sassiness, plus that Caribbean thing. Like I just
Yeah.
like as a Caribbean, I'm so proud of her, of how she's just like ascended and transcended and done all these amazing things. I just would look. I
That
find
would
her
be
so
sexy.
empowering. I just love to be in the room with her. Just she's probably my number one. She's probably the person I really want to like work with. Just to
Claim
have
it
the experience
in
of
the
just
universe.
being in the room with
With
Queen,
her.
that Caribbean Queen Rihanna. She's so proud of her.
And last but not least, outside of your Caribbean food here in Brooklyn, what is your favorite thing about being a Brooklyn resident?
Wow. Brooklyn to me represents dreams coming true. I always loved Brooklyn. I always had a dream to own a brownstone in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. Fort Greene is a neighborhood that I saw it in those Spike Lee movies in the 80s, and I was like, one day, and my dream come true. And people have, over the years asked me, are you gonna move? There were times I was, like, are you gonna move to Atlanta? Are you gonna move to LA? And I'm like, nope.
You can stay right
This
here.
is my home. My family's here and still in Teaneck. When y'all in town, you got a place to visit or a place to stay. Y'all can come see me. But I love, and even though Brooklyn has changed, to me, it's an accomplishment. To me, it's home. When I walk down these streets, just something about the houses and the trees and the flowers outside of the houses. You just get these moments, you get these pockets. Like I love to go upstate to the past Catskill and see beautiful forests and the beautiful vistas. But when you walk down a beautiful house, a well-manicured, house, and you see a beautiful house, somebody in all this concrete is really getting their flower pots on.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
those little moments of beauty, like popping out of the concrete.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just moves my soul. Like
appreciate
I love Brooklyn. I mean, I still take little trips. I had to do an errand yesterday in Dyker Heights. I'm like, I'd never been to Dyker Heights, really Brooklyn in my life. I saw Brooklyn Chinatown for the first time yesterday. I'd never really been in Brooklyn Chinatown like that, and of course the restaurants are close. I'm like, oh, I wonder where the good Brooklyn Chinatown food is. Brooklyn, I mean, people forget that Brooklyn, if it were its own city, would be the fourth largest
city
in America. So there's lots.
I mean, America, yes.
To discover here, and it's ever changing. And there are real ethnic communities here. Like that Brooklyn Chinatown was really Brooklyn Chinatown. I mean, all the signs. I mean, even just yesterday, I was taking a morning walk, and I was just walked that way, and I was walking, and I just felt like walking, listening to a podcast for a couple hours. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that there's the Hasidic neighborhoods, like they owned that much property, and so many signs are in the language. And I just found out. I mean, of course, they weren't like hi, but I was just sort of like impressed, like, wow, this community like has their own institutions, their own schools, their own school bus, like, and I was like, this is an authentic ethnic community. So Brooklyn has like a lot of authenticity.
Yes,
like you can
that's
really drive from one neighborhood to the other, and you are in it.
Yeah, you feel like you've transitioned.
Cultural
yes.
immersion. You go from one place to the other.
next, yeah.
You have, and I love that. It's never boring ever being here. I'm never ever bored. Even during the pandemic, and I was alone really, like for the first 2 months, I didn't see anybody. But I didn't feel alone. I would go out I went out every day. Every day I would just go, even if it was just to the grocery store, just a little 15-minute walk, just to keep my lungs, moving, and just to connect with my community. And even though I don't really have too many friends who live in the neighborhoods, when I see our neighbors, we talk or we chat or we just hi, and I felt very connected. I felt at home in my neighborhood. I love it here. I'm Gordon Chambers, and I love BK is Brooklyn in the house.